everyone. Welcome to Hockey Night Online. I'm Monika Platek, and it is NHL Trade Deadline Day, and we're bringing you all the latest breaking news. And as you're watching live with us, we really do want you to get into the conversation. Today is all about the speculation, all about the rumors. So you can find us a couple of different ways on Twitter at Hockey Night. You can reach out to me directly at Monika Platek, and we're also checking in with Facebook. But let's get to some breaking news right off the bat. We're just hearing confirmed reports that the New York Rangers have traded Ryan Callahan along with 2 draft picks, a second rounder in 2014, a first rounder in 2015, which is the stronger draft year. And in return, they get Tampa Bay Lightning Marty St. Louis, who is just coming off winning a gold medal with Team Canada, of course, in Sochi, Russia. So again, some breaking news, and I love it because we're just about to go on the air and we just found this out. We want to know what your reaction is to this as it's happening, so remember to reach out to us. But today we're also joined by Cassie Campbell Pascal of Hockey Night in Canada, who is joining us all the way from Calgary. Cassie, thank you so much for joining us here today.
No problem, Monika.
So, I really do want to start off with your reaction to what we're seeing here, a deal made between the New York Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. What do you think about this all, Cassie?
Well, I think a deal that, Steve Yzerman probably in the long run wouldn't have wanted to have to make, to lose arguably one of your better players. And, on a day when Steven Stamkos announces he's coming back, you trade your captain. So, listen, he wanted out. There's no question that there was some animosity and a difficulty in the relationship between Martin St. Louis and Steve Yzerman that led from the Team Canada decisions, and he wanted out and he picked one team. And if you look at this deal, what Steve Yzerman was able to get from Martin St. Louis when everyone out there knew he only wanted to go to one team. I think that first round pick in the 2015 draft, that's a key move. The second round pick is good for this year, although it's supposed to be a weaker draft in 2014. And then you also get a piece in Ryan Callahan, and you're unsure as to whether you'll be able to sign that piece, but I think the first rounder in 2015 was good for Steve Yzerman to get, knowing that basically he had to trade Martin St. Louis and he only had one option to trade him to.
We were hearing about this all morning long, Cassie, and we were hearing about both of the Martys because, of course, Marty Brodeur is also another name that's being tossed around in the Twitter world. Nothing there yet, but interesting to see that this was, in fact, confirmed just a few minutes before we went live here. So let's talk about the other biggest news happening yesterday, quite a few hours before the trade deadline. A very surprising move, Roberto Luongo from the Vancouver Canucks being traded over to the Florida Panthers. And here's the question from Twitter, because this really almost broke Twitter when it came down to it with the amount of reaction that was going on. So Nava says, how surprised are you, Cassie, to see Luongo go yesterday?
Well, I think not surprised to see him traded. I think surprised as to when it happened. I thought maybe this would come closer to the draft or, possibly around free agency time or something like that. But to have it happen yesterday, a day before trade deadline day, on a trade deadline that really has seen a lot of movement as far as goaltenders, and a lot of goaltenders actually out there. And there's a plethora of options for general managers when you really think about it. And listen, I think that the relationship was done. I think the distraction that became Roberto Luongo in Vancouver, and to no fault of Roberto Luongo's in my opinion, but I think this is a sign of huge changes coming in Vancouver. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ryan Kessler traded today. And I have to say, I know that Roberto Luongo's paid a huge amount of money, and not a lot of people are going to feel sorry for him, but the way he handled this situation in Vancouver over the last couple of years, this guy deserved to be traded back home, so to speak. He has a home in Florida. His wife is from Florida. He's spending a lot of time lately without his family. They have a place in Vancouver, but it's not the place that they have in Florida. So I'm a big fan of Roberto Luongo. I think he's still a great goaltender, and I think he's an even better person. So to see him traded back to a place that he really does call home, I think was good to see.
He is an all-around class act, and we saw him react on Twitter last night, thanking the fans in Vancouver for all the support they had shown, especially as things were really starting to deteriorate for him there. And of course, thanking his bromance with Eddie Lack, which is sad to see that has now been shattered. But you did mention Kessler there, and he was another one of the really big names that people were talking about nonstop over the last few days. So another question here from Randy. He's saying, I really do hope the Vancouver Canucks do make some kind of a deal for a top shelf goalie, but he thinks they'll have to give up both Kessler and Adler.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to do the both in one deal, but I do see both of those players moving. And listen, I think there's no secret that Ryan Kessler wants out. I mean, you look at the situation in Vancouver and how since making the Stanley Cup Finals against the Boston Bruins, it's really gone downhill. And you look at a guy who's really in the prime of his career, and I think, he's probably not really the only one that wants out. It's just become such a difficult situation in Vancouver. And I think having the A stripped from him earlier this year by John Tortorella, I think, that kind of stung a little bit, and I don't think he really liked it, as any player wouldn't. But now he seems healthy. I think he can garner a lot of attention from other teams, and I think Mike Gillis, if he plays his cards right, not only for him and Alex Edler, but they can get some assets, they can get some roster players, and I think as long as he's patient today, and make sure he gets the right deal.
Okay, so speaking of Mike Gillis, and you said playing the cards right, well, the general consensus from fans is that the cards have not been played right. In fact, there's a lot of anger geared towards Gillis and Torts. Fans don't really know who to turn to because they're so confused by what has happened here over the last couple of months. So Junior Weber is asking quite bluntly, how is Mike Gillis still an NHL GM?
Well, I think right now, you look at ownership and maybe the input that they've had on these moves. And I think if Mike Gillis is looking back at some of the things he's done over the last year, he might regret trading Corey Schneider. But let's not forget the situation that developed last year with Corey Schneider, where he basically came out in the newspaper and said that he kind of had a mental breakdown in the playoffs before and that he wasn't feeling so right. And, so let's not forget that. There was a situation there with Corey Schneider, and at that time he felt that he had to trade Corey, but I think he's going to look back and say that might be the trade that he wished he was a little bit more patient on, and it's all going to depend on how Bo Horvat pans out for the Vancouver Canucks in the near future.
Right. Well, obviously, something's got to give, especially after seeing what happened with Roberto Luongo. And the fans, they're definitely demanding some answers here because, again, they're not really understanding the direction that the team is moving in. Moving on now to another team that has a bit of an unclear direction as well, the Buffalo Sabres. Clearing house over the weekend. Now, this question is being overly ambitious, I think, asking for Kane or Ovi. But more seriously, Cassie, what do you see the situation as being out in Buffalo? Where do you see them going from here? Okay, so we're just waiting for Cassie Campbell's answer. She's just on standby, but I'm going to check in with my phone because I feel like I've been glued to this thing all morning long, and I know so many millions of you have been as well. This is a hockey holiday, and we really don't want to miss a beat. So I'm not seeing anything new developing yet, but I am seeing Gabourik's name in the trends here in Canada, of course, along with Callahan and St. Louis. Of course, that deal was just struck before we went live here with Hockey Night Online. Cassie Campbell Pascal back with us. Cassie, we were talking about the Sabres, and the last question there from Twitter, seeking some direction for the team.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting what Tim Murray does here, if anything, today, or if he continues to kind of get rid of some roster players and just kind of start afresh in Buffalo. And it all depends on what he likes from his core. Is he willing to be a little bit more patient with Tyler Myers, the young defenseman who's really struggled? Does he see Tyler Ennis, Cody Hodgson as part of a core moving forward? And I think those are decisions that Tim Murray has probably thought about since he took over tenure in Buffalo. But I think he's still going to be busy today. What's he going to do with Yaroslav Halak? Is that another piece that he's going to have to move? And then it's going to be, well, who's going to be my goaltender of the future? So I think a lot of decisions happening in Buffalo. I think today is going to be one of those days where he's going to want to make sure that the vultures around him just start picking away this team. He has to make sure that he acquires some good assets if he does make trades today, and that they're smart hockey deals for the Buffalo Sabres moving forward.
And I did just talk about checking in with Twitter and some of the top trends, and I'm seeing Gaborik here because a lot of people speculating that the LA Kings have in fact landed a deal to get Gaborik. Nothing confirmed yet. We'll keep kind of checking in on that as we go. Another question here from Twitter, though, talking about the Montreal Canadiens. This one from Bry94T. Cassie, will the Habs get someone with size for once?
Well, wouldn't that be the ideal situation for Marc Bergevin? I think he's looking today. I think he's potentially in on a deal for Matt Molson, and a guy that can score, that likes to play in front of the net, and that's where Matt Molson does a lot of his damage, sort of in that crease area, and he'd be really good on their power play as well. There's no question getting size is a key thing for the Montreal Canadiens, but I don't think he's going to mortgage any of the draft picks that he has, or any of the assets he has in Hamilton, or Jared Tenorti, or one of the younger players that he has in that group. I think he's going to be smart about it today. And if they don't land someone with size, they still have the potential to do it over the summertime. But that's definitely a priority for Marc Bergevin.
And it's quiet so far on that Montreal front, but of course we're watching every angle. You never want to get surprised by those stealth teams that try to hide under the radar. The next question, I love this one from Twitter, from Hockey Fanatics, because it is just right back down to the point. It's trade deadline day, and he says, my wife asked, why is there a trade deadline?
Well, I think it makes exciting. It makes an exciting part of the game, to have this deadline and the hype that leads up to it. But I think in fairness to the players and their families, it's important to not be able to move a player at any point in the season. I think there has to be that deadline, and it's definitely something that the NHLPA wants. And you think about it, if you're a player and you can be traded up till any point in the season, I think this is a key moment for all players to know that once they're moved or not moved, they're there to stay. And I think that's important for them to have that in their contracts.
Okay, so there you have it. Cassie Campbell answering all your questions, including this very last one that we're going to get to while we have you here with us, Cassie. And this one's from the City of Champs. The Edmonton Oilers feeling a little more comfortable nowadays with Ben Scrivens between the pipes, but they are asking for Chris Stewart. Do you see Chris Stewart going over to the Oilers? Would he be a good fit there?
Well, I think so. A big forward who has some skill, probably better suited for a second or third line rather than a first line. And that's a guy that they need, sort of a bigger player that can, again, be in front of the net, much like we were talking about earlier for the Montreal Canadiens. But, it depends on what you're going to have to give up from him. And at this point of career, he's been a little inconsistent. But if he can find some chemistry with a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, or, a Taylor Hall, or whoever it is that they give an opportunity to play with, I think he'd be a good fit, a big body with some skill and still some youth, but a little bit more mature than some of the core players that they have there.
Cassie, before you go, I know that you just spent close to a month in Sochi, Russia. I saw you there all the time, of course. Just shifting gears a little bit, I'll just get you to kind of tell me your impressions of what happened there, and obviously both the men's and women's hockey teams coming back with gold.
Yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience, and as you know, Monica, it's definitely a bit of a grind as you cover 2 to 3 hockey games per day, but to see the women pull off that amazing comeback victory, I think that goes down as arguably one of the best hockey games in this country. And you can even compare it to 1972 and the Paul Henderson, and what Marie-Philippe Poulin has done now for 2 Olympics in a row to score 2 goals in a gold medal game. And what the men's team did, I mean, there was a lot of criticism back home that they weren't providing enough offense, but probably one of the better Canadian hockey teams put together. And they showed it by playing great defense, and they got great goaltending in Carey Price, and guys like Jonathan Taves and Sidney Crosby stepped up when it mattered most. But to not allow a goal in the semifinals and the finals, that says a lot about your team and how much the guys actually bought in. So it was a real fun experience overall, and I'm not gonna lie, nice to see my husband Brad Pascal bring home another gold medal too as well for Hockey Canada.
That's right, and the men's and women's teams obviously having very different tournaments, but one of my favorite memories was watching that women's gold medal game in a section full of Russians who were cheering with all of their hearts and lungs for Canada. It was a very special moment to see them react to that tying goal in the third. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cassie Campbell Pascal of Hockey Night in Canada.
All right, thanks, Monica. Have a good day.
Thank you. Well, the day is far from over. We're just over 3 hours left to the trade deadline, and we're watching it closely on cbcsports.ca. We want to continue to hear all that speculation, the rumors, and the questions. So keep them coming at Hockey Night, at Monika Platek, and I will definitely stay connected in that conversation. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Hockey Night Online.